Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is making way for the new and the passing of the old guard and how important it is, these cycles of beginnings and endings, death and rebirth and death and rebirth. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present and let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, good morning, Rosalind. Great to have you here with us this morning. Welcome, and welcome to everybody else who's joining us. We're talking today about making way for the new. So we were talking about resilience yesterday and how resilience is the ability to recover, to come back, to persist in so many ways. And it has its positive side in that it allows us to adapt and persist. However, it has a negative side in that it kind of makes change. It's the enemy actually of change in so many ways, because if we are able to adapt and modify, then we don't have to make big change. And so I had this wonderful session with a client talking about how essential this the death process is to the emergence of life, this passing of the old guard, where old paradigms, people who are holding these old paradigms in place, when they pass, it makes space for the emergence of something new. It makes space for that something new to be able to get a foothold, to be able to take hold. And there's a tremendous value in that cycle. And so this person was saying that they wanted to be able to have a view of life that incorporated and honored the composting process, the process of deterioration, the process of disintegration as an essential part of this greater whole. And if you think about it, there are people that hold certain points of view in place. And one of the things that we can look at is the structures and beliefs that have held the patriarchy in place for so long. And there is, at least in my experience, and maybe it's not a global experience, but in my experience, there's an emergence of a new paradigm rather than this top-down domination, control, superiority, inferiority, judgmental, separate, competitive model. There's a new model emerging. In order for that model to emerge, the people who are holding the reins, that are holding this old paradigm in place, need to pass. And so to have that be part of the natural cycle of life is a really wonderful gift in its way, as painful as those passings and those transitions might be. Recognizing the essential nature of them, I think, can help us to flow more easily with life. That we can see the changing of the guard, we can see the passing of the old ways, and make transitions into new spaces of awareness and of being, of a new frequency, because these old patterns have their frequency, and as they pass, those frequencies shift, and it becomes a new environment for us to be able to emerge into. So I think it's a very interesting and valuable way to be able to look at life and look at cycles. We look at life as, if we can look at life as process, then we can see the continuity, we can see the necessity and the elegance of this system that allows for passing. And we can, I think about this also, even in terms of sleeping, where we can have a horrific day and we can go to sleep. And then when we wake up, we can have a new beginning. And yeah, there are typically remnants from the day before, but we often call those forth. We call them forth believing that that's reality, but I think in many cases we call it forth for a sense of continuity. Thinking of, there were a couple movies of people who had short-term memory loss. One was with Drew Barrymore. It was like 90 First Dates or something like that. And another one that was a bit more dark. I can't remember the title at the moment, but this person had short-term memory loss. So every time they would go to sleep and wake up again, the whole world would be new and they wouldn't remember. And so they took to tattooing information on their body so that they would be able to get oriented more and more quickly when they woke up into this new world. And, I guess in some ways, Groundhog Day is similar in notion to being able to start over. And maybe we don't start entirely from scratch, most of us, but to be able to wake into a new day, to have a new beginning, is something that is really powerful for us on so many levels. Really powerful for us on an emotional level, certainly on a physical level. As our bodies age, we can see that cycle also. We can see this movement, like the rising and setting of the sun. And the other thing to be thinking about in that context is, as the sun is rising and setting where we are, it's continuously rising somewhere. It's continuous. So as the earth is turning, the sun is always rising and the sun is always setting. And so it's all part of one big continuous experience. And the rising and the setting is actually relative to where we are, because the sun is just doing what the sun does. And in fact, it's not rising or setting. The earth is moving. So it's very, I think that there's a richness there for us to be able to explore. So Rosalind says a lot of the workforce is retiring. With that, legacy info is lost. The employees taking their place have less experience. So tendency to make course correction could take longer. How does that apply to today's topic? That's a really good insight, actually, Rosalind. You always come up with really good insights. So while there are tremendous benefits to this cycle of life and death and rising and setting, it's true that there is information that is lost that is beneficial, not just detrimental or not just constricting kind of information, but expansive information. So there are many efforts to be curating and collecting the information from wisdom keepers, from elders, to be able to pass that information on and to be able to retain it. It's kind of like the notion of the tattooing the information from that one movie where the person kept forgetting, and they would document the things they needed to remember on their body so that they couldn't lose it. It's very interesting. Gia, good morning, good evening. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome, and great to have you joining us. So the question is, what is the information that we want to keep, and what is the information we want to pass away? You know, it's very interesting to be thinking of this time and the danger, I perceive it as a danger, you may not, of this book burning thing, essentially. And it's maybe not book burning, but book banning, you know, where we are, certain groups are, I'm sure that they believe curating information, but I consider it more propagandizing, you know, by eliminating certain topics. We're in such an interesting time, you know, where we are pursuing freedom and censorship all at the same time, freedom and a move toward totalitarianism all at the same time. It's crazy times we're living in, to be seeing these profound contrasts where so many of us are striving toward awakening and so many others are striving to control a narrative on all kinds of levels and dictate and constrain the potentials and the freedoms. We really truly do live in such interesting times. Such interesting times. So I guess with the endings and beginnings, maybe, and this notion of curating information and knowledge and wisdom, what does that look like? What does it look like to know how to choose? What do we keep and what do we let go of? What do we nurture and what do we release? It was interesting because this person was talking about the passing of a revered relative who was a matriarch in the family and deeply, deeply, deeply beloved, and beloved by this person too. And now a year after their passing, which this person called their cosmic jump, which I thought was so magnificent. A year after their cosmic jump, there is an appreciation for the fact that there is an emergence of kind of a new zeitgeist, a new family dynamic with the matriarch gone, that with the emergence of the younger generation and their preeminence in the family, that there's an opportunity to be releasing a lot of the old frictions that existed and to find new ways of being together. And with no lack of reverence and appreciation and love for those who have passed, but also recognizing that change wouldn't really have been possible without that transition. So my dad died in 2017, and we had a very complex relationship. I loved him dearly, and also we had our challenges. I know he loved me, but I don't know that we always liked each other very much. And we had very different ways of showing our love, I think, too. In any case, as much as I loved him, it was such a relief to me in so many ways when he died. It felt like I had a much greater freedom to be myself, because there was always so much criticism and judgment and hostility to contend with, and to be able to make the choices that I make without being criticized for being who I am was such a relief, such a dramatic relief. And I can carry on his legacy for the things that in me, the things that the gifts that he gave me, the adventurousness that I have, the willingness to try new things, to think outside the box. He wasn't necessarily a revolutionary thinker, but he was a surgeon. He was a veterinarian and very adept in his field and creative in his ways. And so it's interesting to see that so many of the traits that I really appreciate in myself are things that he embodied in so many ways. So I am his legacy in so many ways, although it was, as I said, full of challenge. But to have that influence pass, the constraints of that influence pass, has been tremendously freeing for me. And I've come into a much fuller expression of my authenticity and my essence since he's been gone. And so I think that we can have reverence for what you were addressing, Rosalind, where you're addressing the information, legacy information, that we can have reverence for that and carry that forward, while at the same time finding space for the emergence of perhaps, hopefully more evolved ways of thinking and being. And so even in the grief around our losses, there is this gift that arises for us, this gift of new potentials, the gift of a different frequency, the gift of this changing of what this same person that I was talking about called inherited energies. And these influences can be so strong. You know, it's so interesting. I don't know why it just popped into my head again, legacies. You know, I've said over and over how we're taught how to treat ourselves and how to treat other people. And the thing is that we learn those lessons so well that even when our parents pass, even when those influences that taught us how to treat ourselves and others have gone, we've learned those lessons so well that we've internalized them. And we most often do that unconsciously without any awareness. And then we believe they're ours. And so when we have these challenges with being, we beat ourselves up for it, when in fact we actually never chose those things. We inherited those things, and most often we inherited them in a way that we haven't even had a conscious awareness that we've done so. And without that conscious awareness, we are prey to those things and prey to perpetuating them due to our lack of awareness. And the thing is, at some point, we get to say, wait a second, they're not doing this to me anymore. I'm the one doing it. Now I'm doing this to me. I can't be blaming them anymore. They're not even here. I'm the one that's creating this over and over and over again. And is that in fact what I choose? Is that in fact what I am committed to? So Rosalind says, people's way of self-preservation may be noticing when it's coming from that place. When we're in a place of self-preservation is unfortunately the time that we most need to be looking, and the time that we're least likely to be looking, because we're in this panic state. So that brings to mind another conversation that I had with a client yesterday who was saying that they were having a difficult time. And we have been cultivating all these strategies for them to be able to navigate difficult times. And they said, well, when they're in a difficult time, they just try to put their head down and get through it. And instead of saying, oh my gosh, it's a difficult time, now's the time to be pulling out my toolbox and my resources to be able to address these situations with some autonomy, some power, some sovereignty, to be able to say, I don't have to be at the effect of it. And that's when, unfortunately, it's in those moments that we are the least resourceful and forget that we have all these tools at our disposal, right? That we have all these ways to be able to cultivate our resilience in a good way, So I invite you to look at endings, these endings that might be very challenging, frightening, deeply emotional, grief-filled, sorrow-filled. Again, it's the zoom in, zoom out. When we zoom out, we can get a bigger perspective on how these things fit into the larger picture. And of course, we get to do the grieving before we have the capacity to stand back. They're both important parts of the process. The letting go process, the releasing process takes some time. It's a metamorphosis. And so moving through that, to be able to come to the place where we can recognize the new potentials and allow their emergence. So anyway, that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living. And